Yeah, I guess we're going live. Double check and make sure that everything's good. Try not to have to load up the actual YouTube channel, so if I can, I would just like to go. So hello everybody, it's good to see you all. Just wanted to upload a video real quick. Finally have finished this assessment. And oh boy, oh golly gee, this one was a doozy. It definitely has broken my mind and my sanity. But it has paid off with a great bit of fruit and a sense of humility for me, because in order to win the battle, you sometimes have to learn when to submit and when to overcome a enemy. And when you're dealing with siege warfare, sometimes you have to go and engage the enemy in order to buy time for supplies to be brought into the city while you're under siege. So, like in the siege of Jerusalem, there have been several routes where the people of Jerusalem, as a people's militia, were able to rout pretty much the best army in the region of Rome multiple times, and almost killed, actually. If they'd managed to kill this guy, the entire course of Roman history might have changed, because a couple of the core guys who were involved in the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD, they were core pillars of the Roman military. Now, I don't have the names off the top of my head, because I haven't been researching that for the last month. What I have been researching is something a little bit more personal. As anybody who reads descriptions would have noticed, we are going to be talking about the Capitol incident. We're going to be tackling this from a different angle than you may expect from me. I hope that's tolerable for you all. Nobody thinks that I'm a heathen, but for the course of what I'm supposed to be doing for my job, for school right now, we are commissioned to work specifically from a government angle. So I have to push from a specific point of view that is nonpartisan by nature, and on top of that, I have to look at it from a clinical or analytical point of view. So there's not going to be as much of my pontificating on the intentions or the conspiracy aspects of things, but more of an implication and more like a do your research on your own kind of thing, like lead to your own conclusions. But this is what we should probably be paying attention to for the angle of emergency management. So looking at this from the angle of Homeland Security and emergency management, I am tackling the Capitol incident, looking specifically at the core cause of radicalization. My goal here is to basically de-escalate the tensions, the partisan tensions that have really been stoked to boil over this melting pot that we have developed in America. The goal is to hopefully tackle it from a multifaceted approach. Nevertheless, let's kind of get into the background of this stuff. Now, the core of how we talk about this incident is going to be coming from the angle of propaganda and being aware as emergency managers of what propaganda can do to our analysis and how it can steer us, even if we have the best intentions, in the wrong direction execution of our pursuit of trying to help people fight against radicalization. Hold on real quick, sorry. I am trying to do too much. Yep. Oop. Just want to make sure the streams are working well real quick. Yep, everything seems to be working fine. Just want to make sure I don't get suddenly taken off the air just for talking about the no-no stuff. Anyways, so let's get to this. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, I gained 2 pages. Okay, 35-page essay. Yeah. All right. Get my glasses on. Blind as a bat. Well, I also chose to sit in a dark room. But whatever. Ambience. Ambersance. Ambercant. Anyways, so when we talk about this, I want you guys to think about our common terminology in a different way. And I'll explain that in the context of the assessment, but For starters, we're really talking about the issue between anti-federalist movements and federalist agencies. When we talk about police brutality in the news, or when we talk about whether or not white supremacy has taken over the White House, or now whether or not the White House is going to crush all, conservative elements of the world, whichever angle you want to spin it at. The issues boil down to, even if you want to get to Alex Jones level, like globalism and reptilians, all of that goes down to whether or not federalist movements that are able to gain power are able to still steer the government's hand into oppressing the anti-federalist groups, or will the anti-federalist groups gain power and self-sabotage the entire government system? That's the tension that we're having in terms of the overarching abstraction of these real low resolution debates that we're in. That's important to note, because as we get into this, I don't want us to be stuck on what the news, or even what a lot of these reports from quote-unquote scholars and experts bring to the table. Because if you focus on solely it being a partisan issue, or an issue with a particular demographic of people, then you really miss out on what I think is causing a lot of harm for everyone in this nation in terms of pain, suffering, long-term trauma, and future tensions, and possibly civil unrest. And the goal is hopefully to help everybody, to build a splendid nation as far as the eye can see. After that little introduction, let's get to our meaty report. We're going to be here for a while. You guys should probably grab yourselves something nice to drink, and maybe sit back and enjoy the tunes. Alright, Hana is good. Everything's nice and toasty. I am going to get to it. Think about this real quick. Do I want to show you guys a little report? Yeah, why not? Give me a second. Right, was not in the right tab. Window. Boom. Ah, wow. You were actually already on the ball. Good job. Oh, that's why I didn't want to do it. It frustrated me that I couldn't create a better border. Yeah, that's why. That was why we hated this thing. Whatever. Hi, guys. Anyways. Yeah, screw it. Treat it like a podcast. I don't feel like doing. No, if you guys want, I'll put it in the description. You guys can read it on your own. I don't care. Anyways. We're just going to go back to the other screen. I don't feel like having the camera and everything working right now. For many Americans, there is a hesitation to engage in a political process. This stems from common trends in social media outrages that lead to misconceptions about what this voice of the people is supposed to do. The collective voice of this nation's citizens ought to do about the government corruption and economic decay. Convinced they have no place in society, individuals often self-sabotage or lash out against perceived structures of society. These quote-unquote pillars are attacked in the hope of triggering a reactive change by the affected groups. If this change affects the majority, it can be called a reform or revolution, and the process by which this occurs can be peaceful or violent. If the change affects the minority to reflect the majority's will, we can call this oppression or discrimination. Also, centralized authority acts as a check and balance against public will. Now keep in mind, the election of our nation's governing administration is a prestigious event. Public faith is highlighted by the American fixation on ensuring our government provides for three core virtues. These are voting enfranchisement, ballot transparency, and the immediate totalization of submissions, aka ballots. Of ballot submissions. There we go. That's a better way of saying that. These core principles have been called upon to shape the outline of the 15th, the 19th, the 23rd, 24th, and 26th Amendments. These are collectively called the suffrage amendments, for their focus on defining and legitimizing the election process. Voting rights provided the ability for social and political enfranchisement by all citizens of the United States, free of discrimination based on race, sex, creed, or class. We imagine a crisis like the Civil War was unexpected to a modern audience. The loss of life resulted from a sudden breakdown in diplomacy caused by a stubborn bigotry of what we would call the South. Yet experts in U.S. history, especially the background of Constitutional Convention, know how our founders expected such issues and are determined to endure them by providing us with the means to secure our nation from domestic infighting. Unfortunately, their advice and the discussions needed to produce it are often unheeded by the current generations, relegated to metaphysical applications of these points in fiction and pop culture. We hear phrases like George Santayana's quote, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Sorry, I'm horrible at foreign names because I never know how you're supposed to pronounce them. I'm horrible of English, as you guys can obviously tell. I'm like trapped between 3 different dialects of American English. Yet define ourselves by dismissing historical precedent in our political discussions. So in short, we often forget what's happened in the political process previous to the current administration. This goldfish political process that we're currently finding ourselves in. When we compare current events to the previous, it is often in the lowest resolution of medium that the conversations provide. So in a sense, we'll use Twitter to get most of our news information, and we'll judge that as more qualified or quantitative in terms of its general sum of validation. Like, there's so many people that agree with me, I have so many likes. That form of validation is relative, it's subjective still, even though it's a group opinion, even though it's socially accepted. It's still not an objective truth, or something that you can work with objectively. So in terms of conversating, mediums like Twitter, mediums like a Facebook comment thread, rather than an actual post, those do not provide the same output of information that you could provide if you were to just converse with people or record a video like we're doing now. We must explore how the various processes that shape our nation interfere with the government's ability to mitigate domestic terrorism. So indeed, with the federal government influence, overreach, and meritocracy, which encourages this hyperactive empirical oh my gosh, I'm horrible right now. Hold on, let me just drink this whole thing so my throat stops hurting. Me. Yeah, wow, my throat is horrible lately. I don't think I'm getting sick. I think I just been drinking way too much hot liquid, and it's like burned the back of my throat, and I didn't notice until it was too late, and now I just have like a bad throat. Or who knows, maybe I'm developing the freaking Morgan Freeman voice. That'd be awesome. Procuratorial relationship. Wow, I said this word literally for a week straight, and now I'm just dumping on it. This is what happens when you don't sleep much, people. Hold on. Oh, that's what happened. This whole entire thing is messed up. Hold on, give me a second. We have a hanging sentence. Okay, I know what happened. It deleted half of the sentence, and the other half is missing, and I think that happened when I was cutting and pasting stuff together. I should double check my work. So indeed, with the federal government, there is influence over the executive government. This overreach creates a meritocracy that encourages a hyperactive and prosecutorial relationship with the public. In short, because groups like the FBI and CIA can invest the president for 4 years and basically block him from being able to do anything in office, you can exert influence over the executive branch and over the legislative branch by encouraging government persecution of different government officials, and also of the public by steering public fear. Hmm. Ah, please text me. Sorry, I got a phone call. Our fear of social ostracization, collective radicalism, and authoritative tyranny drives many of public citizens to yield narrowing scopes of view on vital issues affecting our nation's public affairs and commercial interests. Polarization, or the state in which opinions, beliefs, and interests of a group or society no longer range along a continuum, but they concentrate at opposing extremes, is the ultimate result of technological expansions. Now, issues with cybersecurity and censorship are considered far too burdensome to quarrel over on holidays. So, when we get into the idea of how the public perceives a lot of events, it's always going to be low res because we as human beings do not like causing offense because the process of being rejected hurts us on a psychological level. Scholars repeatedly stress the futility of popular associations between modern political trends to previous fads in the 20th century. In the year 2022, it isn't hard to understand why we already have a rowdy and unstable public. Events like 9/11, the global war on terror, the 2008 economic downturn, pandemics like the swine flu, H1N1, and COVID-19, and the political scandal after outrage have rotted away the national trust, the camaraderie, and the respect that the American people have for the representative process, or the representation process. Political icons like Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, and Jeff Bezos rose to prominence on the hopes and expectations of their voters. If people did not believe in their representatives, they would not vote for them. So forming a compliant relationship with the schedules and policies of partisan groups, colloquially called right and left, and represented by the Republican and Democratic monikers, gives government agencies a means by which they can manipulate the people and what they consider important. This is the beginning basis of why we're trying to establish a grounding for federalist and anti-federalist movements, both within the government and outside of the government. One also notes in the matter, and this is a quote from Discourse on Livy, page 90 through 91. One also notes, in the matter of democracies, or demaveracies, stupid Latin names, how easily men are corrupted and make themselves assume a contrary nature, however good or well brought up. If this is well examined, it will make legislators of republics and kingdoms more ready to check human appetites and to take away from them all hope of being able to err with impact. The idea being that in order to prevent a rowdy public or even a rowdy series of conspirators within the government from destroying the entire republic, you must create incentives and punishments through legislation to basically lock them into their positions and make them execute their roles within society as necessary to further the republic. Again, to justify his statement, Machiavelli refers to the acts of Epictetus to surround his 10-man council with those biased towards his legislative ends. In much of the book's chapters 5 through 7, he deals with the results of this fallout, the idea that by electing a 10-man council, they kind of became an insular group of people who were controlling everybody through abusive legislation. So how a public cannot be easily managed by any specific group or organization, but as a whole that requires the contribution of many. Further, these citizens must provide the means for advocating domestic interest, demand limits on how and where their force is expressed, and demand representation and accountability for that representation over the course of their political terms. Now, if citizens could compare America to a home, our bipartisan electoral process would reflect the divisions whenever a home is broken apart. Now, with divorce, the death of a parent, financial strife, and so many of the incidents that people face within a home, these arise and, in a sense, can shatter the psychology or the dynamic or the narrative that a family has set up thus far. So, with a house bearing the brunt of this damage, isolated children can turn against parents. Parents can use rooms to hide from connection or vulnerability. Toxic behavior can rob a family or a household of vitality and novelty. And in general, any form of division within a home breeds a sense of animosity and vindictiveness between all members of the household. This is happening within our political process or even our social processes. So the remaining hope for a dying household is either reformation, the idea that they change everything, they just reinvent the wheel in terms of how they relate to each other, eviction of those who are hostile in the household or toxic in the household, or you let it go on until the household dies from within. This is no doubt the experience of many Americans. One could say it might be an experiment of the government to allow us to go through this process on a mass scale, because it's caused so much trauma to many Americans that one could say that psychologically we're not actually fit to make most of the decisions we're being forced to make right now at such a lightning speed of a tweet, Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Our family lives to shape our social lives, and our social engagements can often define our professional lives and communal perceptions. There are new systems and dynamics to mitigate as we move from a smaller familial home into the quote-unquote home of a business, a movement, or a group in greater society. Now, our identities are formed by the totality of these interactions, the thoughts and desires of the people, which becomes the initiation for most forms of personal politicking. So the idea is that an individual sees a need within their community and start levying their positions of personal influence to say, hey, I have this, I know this person, let me try to figure out a way to solve this issue. Now, according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, politicking is to, quote, engage in an often partisan political discussion or activity. So when a group organizes to distribute and define these partisan events, they become a political body or vessel. The interactions and conflicts generated in the pursuit of this, quote, body's interest, as opposed to another demographic's plan, form the process of what we call, quote, unquote, politics. So politics is caused by political bodies engaging with each other as representatives for individuals' personal attempts at politicking for their own desires and interests. Now, the interactions and conflicts generated in the pursuit of this body's interest is a large part of why politics creates division within a republic. And the divisional nature of topics like history, politics, and religion occurs because they are so interwoven with our society's personal and communal infrastructure that it actually affects how people perceive the individual and the collective. As the availability to access information and opinions grow, the potential for partisan rifts to poison the public towards specific leaders, policies, and events increases as well. If left unaddressed, these ferment into radicalization. Social conflicts become foul-smelling, festering wounds within communities. Now, as state representation demands citizens to elect those they believe will defend their interest from, quote-unquote, the other, so will opposing personalities, which attracts individuals to pursue forms of public grifting. These quote-unquote corrupt politicians become the strawmen that these secessionist movements use to dehumanize others. They say because Donald Trump or because of Joe Biden, and thus I can do this to this person or this group of people, or they deserve to have this done to them. That's kind of how people act in our baser nature. And this phenomenon is why those at the forefront of domestic defense must take active measures to develop policies and recommendations that will respect the nuances and complexity that civil unrest unveils. Out of all the explanations given on the causes of the January 6th Capitol incident, the most popular is to blame the rise of far-right extremism or the prevalence of some radical supremacy movement of the Republicans. Scholastic opinions rarely focus on the mutualistic nature of political discourse and social and political competitions. Most of the solutions provided by DHS in preventing radicalization will only have arbitrary successes in the field, as we will go on to prove during this report. Critical considerations in using this incident as our example would be that we must separate the behavior of mass assembly that devolves into chaos from the idea of planned, organized effort to use violence to control the opinions and actions of others. So the idea is, as the government, we need to prevent people from using other people's political and social associations to basically as targets to then attack them for. Better way of putting that. We should prevent domestic terrorism through de-incentivizing people targeting social movements and groups of people and people for having basically free speech. Thou shalt not be attacked for free speech is basically the gist of what I'm trying to get at. Sorry. Now, when we talk about the January 6th incident, what specifically are we talking about in terms of incident? Well, this incident is really a series of incidents that peaked with January 6th. So, the events of January 6th riots reflect a growing issue between interagency and interstate enforcement that required DHS to assess the guiding principles for how federal agencies protect the public while respecting their constitutional rights. That comes from the official, I think, GAO report on the Capitol 6 riot. Their focus being that we need to stamp down on extremist groups preemptively by using surveillance, using social media posts, and using forms of social expression to then make preemptive judgments on the potential that these people might act in radical ways. In the months leading up to the election, during a presidential debate, President Donald Trump accused former Vice President Joe Biden of being compliant, even encouraging, of the then ongoing 2020 Antifa riots and Black Lives Matter police brutality protests. The VIP, now president, fired back, accusing the president of condoning white supremacist uprisings, erupting a quick retort from the incumbent that he had condemned such behaviors multiple times. Now, in this interaction, critics can note that Trump requested that both host Chris Wallace and Joseph Biden needed to clarify which specific groups and individuals they would like for him to condemn. From this interchange, the bulk of later condemnation against the former president's associations in political times stem from. So when people quote that Trump said, stand by and stand down, well, they don't play the full quote and they don't play the full conversation where they basically set the guy up in order to basically be in that position. Mischaracterizations have shaped the tone of discussion on the causes of January 6th, mainly from the media portrayal of the protesters and rioters and the partisan recalling of events. These biases, in turn, seem to have affected the academic criticism of federal and state response, finally, in turn, leading to increasingly misguided reformations to emergency management response and cybersecurity privileges for the private citizens of the United States. Woof! And yes, I am speaking fast because we're on page 7 of page 35. I gotta read this whole thing. I want to read this whole thing. It's gonna take a minute. The following is a transcript from the 2020 presidential debate between Joseph Biden and Donald Trump, recounted from CPD. I don't know if I can do these voices, but let's try it. Chris Wallace.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not explicitly calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland? Trump. Sure, I'm willing to do that. Wait, no, that sounds more like Biden. Hold on. I like money, plenty of money, much money. Sure, I'm willing to do that. I don't know, I can't really do a Donald Trump voice. Wallace, are you prepared to specifically do it? Well, go ahead, sir. I would say almost anything I see is from... I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing. So, what are you? What are you saying? I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace. Well, do it, sir. Biden jumps in here saying, say it. Do it. Say it. You want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a name. You go ahead. Who would you like me to condemn? Wallace. White supremacists and racists. Biden joins in with Proud Boys. Wallace joins in again. White supremacists and white militias. Biden then again says Proud Boys. So then Trump comes back in with Proud Boys, stand back and stand by, but I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa on the left, because this is not a right-wing problem, this is a left-wing problem. Biden says then, his own FBI director said, unlike white supremacists. Trump said, this is a left-wing problem. Antifa is an idea, not an organization. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Not a militia. That's what his FBI director said. God, Jesus, this is so dumb. Exchange. But anyways, well then, you know what? He's wrong. Gentlemen. No, we're done, sir. Moving on to the next. And then everybody starts bickering amongst each other. I probably should have just played the actual video. That must have been traumatic for everybody involved. Wee, awkward. Sorry, I'm stalling for time until my voice resets. Because, we're just getting into the beginning of it, people. You don't even know. The House of Representatives passed House Resolution 24 to bestow a second articles of impeachment for President Donald Trump by the majority Democrat U.S. House of Representatives, claiming to be, quote, in maintenance and support of its impeachment against him for high crimes and misdemeanors. This accusation hinged on the shared belief that he knowingly spread false information about the election results, contested with evidence that infighting between Republican officials over, quote, recall efforts for the preceding weeks prevented any natural recourse for accusations of voter misrepresentation. Quote, Proud Boys stand back and stand by has been detached to then construe all sorts of conspiracy theories surrounding the president's involvement in the riotous aspects of the election rally attendance. American citizens can contest election results and demand a transparent accounting of the ballot results before electors invest in the final vote. That is a constitutional right. Refusal to broadcast or give credibility to the claims of 2020 election fraud stands in the face of considerably partisan admissions of the security of the election. Notable is that many of these individuals stood to gain immediate enfranchisement by deflating these claims of fraud. To be consistent with their previous claims of 2006 election fraud committed by a supposed collaboration between the Donald Trump election team and Russian hackers, these claims should have received the same amount of criticism and investigation as they did back then. Now, back in 2016, these claims began a 4-year-long series of investigations, leaks, and death threats focused towards Republican associates of that then president. And at the same time, interoperability and interagency efficiency decreased due to partisan infighting and an arguably unconstitutional fixation on the intentions and authority of the then transitioning team. Whew. In the most objective of opinions, public trust in private infrastructure, personal security, foreign and domestic investments, and our social harmony were severely damaged by the accusations and subsequent use and abuse of power displayed by Democratic officials under Donald Trump. Observing the evidence from the preceding 8-year period, you can form separate opinions on the nature of the formation of the Trump movement. What can be objectively stated is that disenfranchisement and national exclusion felt by many of the citizens of both parties has fermented an animosity that disrupts the ability of the federal and civil government to act in the best interest of the nation at large. In the constitutional investigation of the incident, Chairman Thompson, Democrat, wrote a letter to James P. Wilson for his involvement with Mark Meadows over the election fraud theories. This fixation with the election's integrity and the public perception of the results seems to be clearly stated within all documents. Yet somehow when these riots were caused, most journalists and experts could only pull out an accusation of, quote, far-right extremism as their basis for all response. Yet in June 2020, the George Floyd protests had erupted, and these same people criticized the president for sending enforcement. Groups like the left-wing Antifa held over 140 protests openly, while FBI Director Christopher Wray deemed them a movement and ideology, and not a thoughtfully organized threat to the infrastructure of the American system. The media and Democratic officials refused to acknowledge openly secessionist movements spawned from far-left supporters of the anti-Trump political movements that arose in the 4-year period previous to the 2020 election. This, in turn, seemed to have caused the radicalization of the far-right and moderate right into a reactive backlash, culminating in the January 6th incident. There is objective evidence of bias, with the only academic disagreement on the prevalence of left-wing influence in federal government decisions coming from either the Democrat officials themselves or, quote, nonpartisan associates who are hired to report on such things. As an emergency manager, I honestly see no difference between the accusation of secession towards the Republicans, as was already modeled for them by Democrat officials and citizens under Trump. In the 2 years since giving the president's in the 2 years since the president's election, sorry, this is one of those typo things where it didn't copy and paste properly. In the 2 years since the president's election, the negative opinion towards Biden should have erupted far worse riots over the course of the year than what we have seen on the beginnings of the 2020 turnover or election. Sorry, this whole entire paragraph was messed up. General, just what I'm trying to say is that if Republicans were as violent as January 6th is being spun to put, we should have seen more active radicalization, more violence, and more cumulative destruction of public infrastructure on that level, given the threat that we saw, but we have not seen it. So if anything, it looks to be a reactive explosion of outrage towards what they've seen as an accumulation of offense. This is why the nature of the report will focus on the psychology and ethics to be applied in later response and prevention measures, and to dissuade our legislators from condoning the passing of policies that may further disenfranchise and radicalize either of the partisan groups that are responsible for the general disruption and chaos in the nation. The issue is not a far-right or far-left issue, but federalist and anti-federalist. So the idea is we need to decrease the ability for left and right groups to just burn down our infrastructure whenever they're mad. The 2020 George Floyd riots were a response to perceived failures within the federal justice system that were claimed to have caused instability and abuses within lower courts and law enforcement. The rejection of Trump's wall mandate spawned dozens of protests and riots, and the overt breaking of federal law by state authorities and private citizens, encouraged by the open rejection and hate directed towards the then president. If Donald Trump had won the 2020 election, there is evidence that the Democrat response would have been more violent and more widespread than the Republican response found on January 6. Instead, talks of a revolution and of killing Republicans are swept under the rug by officials and media personalities after the event. Still, as protectors of all citizens, we as emergency managers need to address the potential effect that this might have on the security of our elections and state offices. We cannot disenfranchise one group or punish one group for something both groups are quite capable of. Again, it is clear from both leaked messages during the events and the numerous lawsuits prescribed by the Trump legal team that there was a blatant attempt by the president to receive representation within the Congress on these election fraud claims. Again, something hypocritically denied to the same person investigated for 4 years primarily based on election fraud claims. Arguably, the outrage displayed by him and his supporters was mild to the majority of Trump's opponents. As I will note in the main report, it is tough to stay objective in this case because of the wealth of opinion on the private justifications and intentions of everyone involved. We need facts. We need patterns and accurate information that can be relied upon, not gossip and fear-mongering that benefits the incoming party. Democrat officials would view any action in favor of Trump as an attempt to game the unique circumstance of the passing pandemic voting reforms to increase Democrat participation, or to increase Republican participation and modify the results. This would be the basis for which Democrat protesters could then go and storm the Capitol on their own pretense if Donald Trump had won. Now, issues with ballot surveyors being rejected and ballots being modified are worth considering regardless of whichever partisan side is accused of committing that fraud. The federal government needs to treat these accusations with the seriousness demanded of a free and transparent process. Instead, what we've seen, perhaps even in both elections, is mockery and a reliance on the snobbish partisan rejection of claims and character defamation in order to disprove very legitimate accusations and theories that should be investigated, even if they are minor in their overall influence on the election process. To go into the wealth of realization on the hypocrisy that abounds within the politics of our current union is beyond the scope of this report, though. So what we have to, again, redirect the reader to review the news that has been released since 2015. In short, if you guys really want to get into the process of whether or not our partisan system is being manipulated to steer our election process towards a federal, to an increasingly unelected federal form of representation, then I will have to redirect you to just looking at our history for the last 5 years and reading every article from every side. So there are two situations to plan for, ultimately, as emergency managers. If the general opinion is correct, we can punish anybody and everyone remotely associated with the desire to go and, revolt. Now, in this specific case, it'd be anybody who remotely is associated with the desire to publicly assemble and support Trump, who we are defaming disingenuously as a white supremacist in this case. If we do that, we will meet the newfound fixation on stomping out quote-unquote far-right radicalism. And in doing so, we will actually radicalize the far-right and the moderate right into unifying to a stronger coalition who see everybody outside of their group as enemies. So when Vice President Michael Pence refused to back Trump's election claims, this led to a massive division within the Republican Party, and media coverage from the right. Oh my gosh, hold on. Brain, eyes, focus. Media coverage from the Conservative Party reflects this fact. Regardless of the president's involvement, the public made an apparent move to reject the election results, perhaps fed by the previous threats by the left that they themselves would riot if Trump won. So, because the left was so anxious about Trump winning the 2020 election, the right, when they saw that they lost the election, was so incentivized by the left that they decided, you know what, screw it, it's our turn. Again, it gets back to the idea that this is kind of like children in a household just losing it because the household itself is falling in disarray. Thus, another situation could have occurred. Let's imagine a different 2020 election, wherein Trump won the election, and the accusations of election fraud erupted from the opponents on the left, and riots accompanied the rejection of Trump's results. My brain. What page are we on? Hold on, I'm taking a break. 12 of 35! Ah! Okay. I'm not prepared to do this for the rest of my life, but I'm getting there. So if Trump won the election and accusations of election fraud came from the left, they would have riots on the left. And again, if Trump is forced to crack down on these groups, that would further encourage the radicals on the left, and it would indoctrinate those who are moderate on the left with a victimization narrative that rallies the majority of the population to retaliate against the administration. So, if that happens, and it's the left wing doing it against Donald Trump, wouldn't that have been insurrection or succession? Would that likely to have caused civil war, if not unrest, if Donald Trump had won the election again, since everybody was saying that he's going to basically just keep rigging the election so he wins and can just be, dictator of the earth? In that same vein, if we embolden the radicals and indoctrinate the right with a victimization narrative that rallies this newfound surge of multiracial conservatives back to Trump, and have his supporters be back for this idea that there's the government and the government's trying to step down on conservatism, and you know what? We all need to band together if we're truly trying to hold up America. That mentality is going to be incentivized by trying to crack down on it. You're doing yourself a disservice by trying to prevent people from caring about the things they care about by telling them not to care about it. Most Americans are critical of the government, but not hostile to it. And this is the Federalist voter. Most voters are Federalists. That's why they vote. They seek to enfranchise themselves and others within the election system or process, and this is how they contribute to the overall government system. Now, anti-federalists are motivated by division and balkanization. This is wherein they thrive when groups can be separated and pitted against a common threat, and thus they give their power, their representative power, to these representatives, who then wield the quote-unquote mob rule against their opponents. This is often focused on government response and is represented with criticism of events like the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution. Heck, you could say the Revolution in the Weimar Republic was one such revolution. Plenty of blood and violence has flowed through the streets of human history because of anti-federalist groups. But federalist groups, at the same hand, tend to be created by anti-federalist groups. So again, this is part of a process that, in order to nip in the bud, you have to see it for what it is. So while there needs to be a focus on advancing the cyber infrastructure and transparency of the election systems, there ought to be modifications on how officials identify and manage potential emergencies within mass gatherings. There were reports of clashes between Antifa and Trump stop the still protesters in the previous 2 months before the election alone, or before the turnover to President Biden after the election alone. So that would be from November and December before January. And so in the days leading up to the event of the incident, there were open calls by the left-wing social media groups to attend the Capitol on the day of the final count. This was because they perceived that Donald Trump might rig the election to win. So though this is attested again by the same groups as being a conspiracy theory, the only people who are allowed to publish and popularize any official opinion on the matter are said left-wing groups. So can't really take them at face value on that. If you look into the actual reports by both sides, there's plenty of evidence that yes, people on the left were trying to get involved in the election process should it had not gone in their favor. So the official opinion is that white supremacists stormed the Capitol while lighting pipe bombs within their own crowds and endangering their fellow supremacists in an overt attempt at overthrowing the election and installing Donald Trump as the ruler of this nation. In a sense, these people were completely willing to kill their fellow radicals in order to make a statement, I guess, in taking the Capitol building. They were just going to suicide bomb themselves. I mean, it seems hyperbolic, but it has to be stated this way because that's the only understanding Americans should have on the situation as being reported officially. Even myself, previous to researching for this report, actually had started thinking like, okay, maybe white supremacist groups were taking the reins of this and led it astray. But indeed, this is now the best time for emergency managers to maintain a highly objective third-party status within these partisan times. We cannot allow that kind of preference towards, benevolence to lead us to misconstrue the real cause of a situation. Whew. Honestly, I should make this a three-parter. Where are we at? It's about an hour long. Yeah, we'll get a little bit further. Then we'll level off at about an hour, and then we'll stop, take a break. I can finish up on the rest of this in a minute. Whoo, wee, bada, ba, ba, boo, ba, ba, da, ba, da, boo, boo. Okay. So yeah, I'm tired. I'm sorry, guys. I'm doing my best. It's just so much. I mean, look at this. Look at this. You guys want to read this? Anybody else want to read this out loud for the class? Who wants to read this for the class? Anybody? Oh, the class. Class, gather around. We're gonna finish the story. Oh gosh, my brain is just done. This is what happens when you focused on literally one thing for a month straight and your brain is just so done with it that you just want to blow it up. Do I have a rifle? Thank goodness I don't have a rifle. I have a sword! Ha ha! Oh! Crap. I didn't set up transitions. Anyways. This is where my ADHD is kicking my butt. Alright, so how does radicalism develop within a society, guys? Class, raise your hands if you have an answer for how radical is it? How radical do you get when society is a mess? How radical do you get when society is a wreck? There you go. I'm a poet of modern times. The what you call it? The diabetic Shakespeare, that's not it. The dialectical equivalent of Shakespeare, I think was how it was put. Procrastinate because I don't want to go on. I'm trying to stall for time so I could be exactly at an hour. Actually, you know what? Yes, we will take a break after these messages. Just imagine I did die and we needed to replace me with a clone. Before we continue on, well, with the part 2, I just wanted to basically say thank you guys for whoever actually is reading, or listening to all this. All of the research and things that I've put on this channel, it's a labor of love. It's a testament to tenacity and frustration with my own thoughts and my own processes for how to deal with and move on through these transitioning times and trends in society. And honestly, the biggest pleasure that I've had in going for my bachelor's has come from the fact that it's really forced me to, both when I was working and both as a non-working member of society, to really see things in different ways. Being able to step back from the workforce and the labor force at this period has been really good for me because as my career is focused on trying to look at the problems that are coming up before people, I'm able to step a little bit back and kind of see what everybody's getting drummed up over and just kind of be like, okay, that's low level. Okay, this is the real issue of what's really driving people people insane on both ends. And that's kind of my goal here. Those of you who know me on Facebook, you might see the more crazy side of me. Those of you who know me in real life, you guys see the more benevolent side of me who's just trying to build a better society. Those of you who know me on here, you get to see the mixture of me, kind of a rogue bar that shows up kind of groggy and discombobulated. Has a high luck roll, but you know what? Who knows how long his stamina is. Depends on whether or not he has had much sleep that day. So, in general, I want to do more things like this, but personally, I wish I had better production value, to be honest. I had a good system going before my whole both my laptops shut down, to be honest. I think I actually might be able to get the other one up and going now. I think I got the equipment to fix it. I just haven't actually gone for to fix it. What else? As you guys can tell, I'm kind of getting reestablished into my life as a teenage robot. Oh man. Now, I'm starting to settle down and kind of just feel more comfortable. Like I said, I honestly don't plan on making videos consistently till spring. I mean, not spring, end of spring, summer, and August. There we go. That's a more determinate time. August. That sounds like a more reasonable time. Because I want to work on so many other things than just being here all the time, talking for hours upon hours. To be honest, there will be times where I'll probably just pop in and make videos and stuff, and there are videos like this that I want to make. Other things that I have are essays and other little creative writing bits and prompts that I've worked out that I'm going to record with me, I moved it to the garage. My handy dandy tape recorder. So, I have some crazy stuff that we're working on, but at the same time, 2 hands. 2 hands, half a brain. 2 halves of a brain. 2 halves of a brain. But but at the same time, when it's released, who knows? What it is, you guys aren't gonna know. And how many of these things I'm working on? Seriously working on 3. Passively working on, in total, it would be, total it'd be 8, 5 more on top of the 3. I have 13 projects that I'm working on, and the rest are just kind of thrown off to the wayside. But my biggest thing right now is project upload. So I'm uploading everything. So, with all the stuff that I have to upload, and everything that I have to do, why is some storming in like this? Storming. That's why I got the clicker. Oh, that's what that was. Yeah, I was gonna put $20 on your cash app to see if you wanted to go get pizza, but you didn't answer the phone. Well, I'm doing business right now, sir. Nah, it's all good. You want me to go get pizza? That's illegal, right? You can't kill somebody breaking your house with a sword. You can't? That's so dumb. But I can kill people with bare hands. You kill them with your bare hands. They come in and they don't have a weapon. This is more merciful. You've seen me. Okay. Hey, Noodles. Yeah, if you want to get pizza, just let me know. Alright. Sweet. That means I don't have to go and buy food tonight. So, as you guys could tell, I'm obviously about to go eat because I am hungry and tired. And I can record more of this stuff later because it's literally just typed up on a paper. It's not like the thing's gonna magically change. So, I'll get back to you guys. Anyways, peace. Oh, what else? Yeah, like and subscribe. Isn't that what people say to do at the end of videos and stuff? Oh, I'm supposed to have little pop-ups that constantly go, like and subscribe, like and subscribe, like and subscribe. Do whatever, you guys. Just, yeah, enjoy. Oh, man, I'm out of touch with this stuff. I was on a roll before, now I'm kind of just... I think now I'm just kind of... It's like that point in your, like, deployment where you just kind of don't care anymore. It's not that I don't care about you guys or what I'm doing, it's just... We're in the second year of COVID. I don't care. Like, yeah, the entire country is burning down right now as we speak, but it's like, I care, but I don't. I spent 4 years ranting on here about how to fix it. It's not like it's hard. It just takes collective effort. It's not like my answers are come from me being a genius or anything. I've literally just listened to what other people said who are smarter than me. So, I mean, I've seen people literally... group chats that are 500 participants, and it's like all of them are ragging on people like Jordan Peterson. It's like, how about you guys just learn to apply the things he says, and if it doesn't work for you, to move back on with your life. So as always, if you're not into the things that you hear or the advice that's given to you, take it or leave it. But everything's there for the purposes of being utilized if purposeful. We don't think of things or think something's important unless it has some sort of utility to us. So dwelling on that thought, I will